Welcome back to the channel. Today we're cutting through the noise and getting straight to the heart of what happened in Berea yesterday. I've got to tell you, the fallout from Shedeur Sanders being forcibly removed from practice is more than just a headline. It's a seismic event that could define the Cleveland Browns franchise for years. Forget everything you thought you knew about the quarterback competition. This isn't about reps or depth charts anymore. This is about betrayal, a complete organizational meltdown, and a power struggle that has been simmering since draft night. When Sanders walked off that field, helmet in hand, jaw clenched, eyes burning with what sources are calling unmistakable betrayal, it was the moment the inevitable explosion everyone predicted finally happened. Teammates froze, coaches went silent, the atmosphere shifted from a routine Thursday practice to an organizational funeral in an instant. If you've been following the consistent, almost artistic dysfunction of the Cleveland Browns, you know this was never a matter of if, but when. The flashpoint. It was during the 11-on-11 situation drill, specifically third down conversions. Multiple eyewitnesses, people with direct knowledge of the inner workings, confirmed the tension wasn't sudden. It was a slow, toxic build throughout the morning session. The core of the problem, Sanders, the fifth-round sensation the owner personally championed, was consistently receiving fewer quality repetitions compared to Dillon Gabriel. At first, he maintained his professional demeanor, swallowing the slight, but when Gabriel started taking first-team snaps consistently, relegating Sanders to scout team work against the backup defense, the disrespect became palpable, undeniable, and intentional. This wasn't a quiet frustration, it was a calculated marginalization. Sources near the quarterback meeting rooms revealed Sanders finally approached offensive coordinator Alex Van Pelt between periods. He wasn't pleading, he was demanding clarity about the repetition allocation and the supposed developmental plan. Van Pelt predictably deflected, hiding behind coaching decisions without offering a substantive explanation. Sanders persisted, his voice elevating slightly, that thin veneer of professionalism momentarily slipping. That's when head coach Kevin Stefanski intervened. He pulled Sanders aside, a seemingly private conversation near the perimeter of the practice field, but the animated gestures and rapidly heating words were visible across the entire facility. This is where the situation detonated completely. Stefanski allegedly informed Sanders that his attitude represented a distraction, his audacity to question authority undermined the team's structure, and his current presence was deemed counterproductive to the installation progress. The message was delivered with unmistakable clarity: leave the facility immediately. Practice continues without you. Address the situation tomorrow after cooling down. Sanders stood there, momentarily stunned, processing this public dismissal delivered before his teammates, coaches, and support staff. One source described his expression as a mixture of absolute devastation and pure rage. He didn't argue. He didn't plead his case. He simply turned, grabbed his helmet, and walked directly toward the locker room. The visual is now burned into everyone's memory. Sanders striding across the practice fields, body language screaming humiliation, frustration, and utter disbelief. Teammates watched in silence. Offensive linemen exchanged concerned glances. Receivers whispered nervously. Nobody intervened. Nobody defended him. Nobody challenged the coaching staff's decision. That silence spoke volumes about the fractured locker room dynamics, a fear of reprisal superseding loyalty, and self-preservation dominating team unity. Don't misread the circumstances. This was not the spontaneous outburst of an immature prospect who can't handle adversity. Sources close to Sanders described this as the result of weeks of accumulating disrespect, systematic marginalization, and a deliberate undermining effort despite the owner's public backing. The kid arrived in Cleveland expecting a fair competition, structured development, and a professional environment. Instead, he encountered a coaching staff that clearly preferred Gabriel and a front office unable to establish authority. Thursday was the breaking point after enduring systematic disrespect disguised as coaching strategy. Let's dissect the profound impact because the consequences extend far beyond a single practice dismissal. The first casualty is the locker room chemistry, which was already fragile and is now completely shattered. Veterans are reportedly divided. Some believe Sanders overreacted, questioning authority inappropriately. Others recognize the coaching staff deliberately provoked the confrontation, creating the perfect justification for Gabriel's promotion. The division intensifies daily. Offensive meetings are awkward. Position group dynamics are uncomfortable. Team meals feature segregated seating. This is an organizational fracture resistant to any quick resolution, and it potentially defines the entire season trajectory before meaningful games even begin. Secondly, the fan reaction is absolutely explosive. Social media platforms erupted immediately following initial reports. Shedeur trended nationally within 30 minutes. Stefanski out is gaining momentum simultaneously. Brown's supporters are viciously divided between Sanders loyalists and coaching staff defenders. The discourse turned toxic rapidly, perfectly mirroring the organizational chaos consuming the franchise. One viral tweet, which accumulated millions of impressions overnight, simply declared, "You don't send home your franchise QB. This team is a circus." Another stated, "Stefanski is destroying another talented roster through ego and incompetence." This fan base is already exhausted from decades of quarterback disappointment, and they are watching another potential disaster unfold predictably before their eyes. The national media machinery activated instantly. ESPN interrupted regular programming. NFL Network assembled an emergency panel. Fox Sports analysts debated the incident for the remainder of the afternoon. The takes varied dramatically. Some defended Sanders' competitive fire, interpreting the frustration as leadership intensity rather than an immature outburst. Former quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick commented, "This shows he cares. This proves he's invested. You want quarterbacks demanding respect, fighting for opportunities, refusing to accept backup roles passively." Others criticized the apparent disrespect for authority, questioning whether Sanders possesses the necessary temperament for franchise quarterback responsibilities. Perhaps the most damning analysis came from an anonymous NFL executive contacted by Adam Schefter. "This isn't about one bad day. This is about trust. And right now, there's none left between Sanders and the coaching staff. You can't recover from public humiliation like this. Somebody's leaving Cleveland soon, either Sanders or Stefanski. Both can't survive this." This is where complications intensify exponentially. The power dynamics within the organization are now completely exposed. Owner Jimmy Haslam was reportedly livid upon learning about Sanders' dismissal, immediately contacting general manager Andrew Berry, demanding explanations and threatening coaching staff intervention. Haslam personally championed Sanders' selection, publicly proclaimed him a franchise cornerstone, and invested organizational credibility into that fifth-round gamble. Stefanski's decision directly undermines ownership authority, challenges the front office's judgment, and establishes coaching autonomy amid a deep hierarchical confusion. Berry is positioned impossibly between competing interests. Football operations are philosophically aligned with the coaching staff's preference for Gabriel's traditional development approach. Simultaneously, organizational survival requires satisfying the owner's clearly stated preferences. Sources claim Berry spent Thursday evening conducting damage control, mediating between Stefanski and Haslam, attempting to prevent a complete organizational implosion. We're hearing Berry advocated for immediate Sanders reinstatement, a public coaching staff apology, and a modified practice structure ensuring equitable repetition distribution. Stefanski allegedly refused to compromise, insisting discipline supersedes draft position, ownership preference, and media narrative. This transcends a quarterback competition. It's a fundamental organizational identity crisis. Stefanski is wagering his professional reputation on maintaining authority amid unprecedented owner interference. He's clearly exhausted watching his carefully constructed program foundation eroded by external influences. The diplomatic approach has been abandoned. He's tired of navigating ownership mandates while trying to establish a winning culture. His message delivered unmistakably on Thursday. The coaching staff determines playing time, establishes discipline, and controls the locker room, regardless of ownership preferences. This is remarkably bold considering Haslam's documented history of firing coaches who resist his directives. We need to address Sanders' perspective because context matters significantly. Consider his unique circumstances. The son of the legendary Deion Sanders, benefiting from a lifetime of football immersion while constantly fighting nepotism accusations. He arrives in Cleveland not merely as a prospect, but as a cultural phenomenon, complete with documentary crews, endorsement portfolios, and a massive social media following. The scrutiny intensifies everything. Every mistake is magnified, every success questioned, and every emotional response is interpreted as entitled behavior rather than competitive fire. Sources close to Sanders describe his frustration as completely justified. He's executed everything the coaching staff requested, learned a complex offensive system rapidly, consistently demonstrated exceptional arm talent, connected with receivers, and maintained a professional demeanor despite obvious coaching staff resistance. Yet he watched Gabriel receive preferential treatment disguised as merit-based competition. Thursday's repetition distribution represented the final straw after a week of systematic marginalization. One teammate teammate, speaking confidentially, stated, "Shedeur's right to be pissed. They're setting him up to fail, then criticizing his reaction when he calls out the BS. It's deliberate sabotage disguised as coaching decisions." Another veteran offensive lineman supposedly told a local reporter, "Kid's been nothing but professional since arriving. Today wasn't about attitude problems. Today was about finally standing up for himself after being disrespected repeatedly." Consider the physical evidence supporting Sanders' frustration. Practice film analysis reveals a stark repetition disparity. Gabriel is averaging 15 first-team snaps daily. Sanders is receiving maybe 7, often against the backup defense during simplified installations. Gabriel is working with the starting offensive line. Sanders is frequently practicing behind second-string protection. The competitive disadvantage is obvious, intentional, and indefensible. How can the organization possibly expect a fair evaluation under systematically unequal conditions? Beyond repetition counts, examine the qualitative differences. Gabriel is receiving complex play installations, full offensive package access, and coordinator consultation regarding adjustments. Sanders is relegated toward basic concepts, limited route combinations, and minimal input regarding scheme preferences. One offensive assistant speaking anonymously acknowledged, "We're not giving Shedeur a real chance at competing. The coaches decided Gabriel was their guy before training camp started. Everything since then has been theater." Don't overlook what makes this situation particularly explosive: timing. The regular season approaches rapidly. Roster decisions loom immediately. Depth chart publications are imminent. Cleveland faces a critical organizational crossroads, requiring a definitive quarterback commitment. Instead, they have complete dysfunction, threatening to derail competitive aspirations before meaningful games begin. The Browns constructed a championship-caliber defense, acquired offensive weapons, and invested resources supporting immediate contention. Now, organizational chaos is potentially wasting a talented roster amid a preventable controversy. The pressure surrounding the franchise intensifies tremendously following Thursday's incident. Every subsequent practice will face microscopic examination. Each coaching comment will be scrutinized for hidden meaning. Every front office statement will be analyzed for political positioning. Social media speculation amplifies hourly. National analysts are descending upon Cleveland, seeking insider perspectives. Local reporters are cultivating competing sources. Suddenly, the Browns' quarterback situation dominates sports discourse nationally, completely overshadowing actual football preparation. The scenarios moving forward appear limited and problematic. Option 1. Sanders returns Friday, receives a public apology, and the competition resumes under a modified structure ensuring fairness. This requires Stefanski to swallow his pride, acknowledge overreaction, and compromise the authority he fought to protect. Given his documented stubbornness, commitment toward an established hierarchy, and resistance toward ownership interference, this seems unlikely. Option 2. Sanders returns without an apology. The situation remains unresolved. Tension continues building toward the inevitable future explosion. This guarantees an ongoing distraction, persistent media speculation, and locker room division intensifying weekly. Championship aspirations become impossible amid organizational warfare consuming energy, focus, and unity. Option 3. The Browns trade Sanders immediately, eliminating the controversy while acknowledging complete organizational failure. This satisfies the coaching staff's preference, while publicly humiliating ownership, admitting the fifth-round gamble failed spectacularly, and potentially triggering a front office overhaul. Cleveland's quarterback situation returns to square one after investing significant draft capital, organizational credibility, and fan enthusiasm into the Sanders experiment. Option 4. Stefanski is fired immediately. A new coaching staff implements a Sanders-centered offense. The organization commits fully toward the ownership's quarterback preference. This establishes a dangerous precedent regarding coach-owner dynamics, potentially deterring future coaching candidates, signaling organizational instability, and discouraging free agent recruitment. None of these options represent remotely satisfactory resolutions. Every pathway features significant drawbacks, lasting consequences, and competitive compromises that exemplify a catastrophic organizational failure requiring a comprehensive structural reevaluation extending beyond the quarterback controversy toward fundamental decision-making protocols. For league observers, Cleveland's situation represents a cautionary tale regarding the importance of organizational alignment. Multiple franchises currently navigating similar owner-coach tensions are observing the Browns' dysfunction gratefully, recognizing the potential consequences when boundaries blur, hierarchies collapse, and communication deteriorates. One Western Conference general manager supposedly supposedly commented privately, "Thank God that's not us." But honestly, we're closer to Cleveland's situation than people realize. Every organization has these tensions simmering beneath the surface. Consider the contractual implications complicating everything further. Deshaun Watson's guaranteed arrangement continues to haunt the financial ledgers, limiting roster flexibility and preventing a comprehensive quarterback room overhaul. Gabriel's rookie contract represents a cost-controlled asset potentially squandered through mismanagement. Sanders' immediate promotion created unrealistic expectations, potentially hampering his long-term development. This transcends a single practice incident toward a comprehensive organizational failure affecting multiple seasons, impacting draft strategy, influencing free agency decisions, and determining coaching staff longevity. Social media dynamics amplify everything exponentially. Sanders' massive following mobilized instantly, defending him, attacking the coaching staff, and demanding organizational changes. Gabriel's supporters emphasize his professionalism in contrast, suggesting Sanders' behavior validates the coaching staff's preferences. The discourse becomes tribal warfare, featuring personal attacks, conspiracy theories, and emotional manipulation. One TikTok video analyzing Sanders' body language leaving practice accumulated 3 million views overnight. YouTube creators are dissecting the incident frame by frame. Reddit threads speculate about behind-the-scenes power struggles. An entire ecosystem is now orbiting the Browns' dysfunction, generating content, driving engagement, and perpetuating the controversy. Meanwhile, divisional opponents observe the situation gleefully, recognizing the competitive advantage emerging from Cleveland's chaos. Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh defensive coordinators are studying the Browns' organizational vulnerability, preparing schemes exploiting potential quarterback uncertainty, and anticipating communication breakdowns resulting from locker room division. The competitive implications extend beyond roster talent toward the organizational stability that differentiates contenders from pretenders. For Sanders personally, Thursday represents a defining moment regarding professional identity formation. How he responds determines his career trajectory significantly. Does he apologize, accept a diminished role gracefully, and rebuild coaching staff relationships patiently? Does he demand a trade, force the organizational hand, and prioritize personal advancement over team commitment? Does he double down, maintain his competitive fire, and refuse to accept disrespect regardless of the consequences? Each pathway features significant risks and uncertain outcomes. History suggests Sanders chooses confrontation over capitulation. His entire background screams competitive intensity, self-belief, and resistance toward authority, questioning his abilities. From the Colorado success under his father's guidance toward the draft night slide that fuels his motivation, everything suggests a fighter mentality unwilling to accept backup status passively. Thursday's dismissal likely intensifies his determination rather than encouraging compromise. Sources close to Sanders describe him as more motivated than ever to prove everyone wrong. The Browns desperately require immediate intervention, preventing complete organizational collapse. Somebody must establish clear authority, define decision-making protocols, communicate expectations consistently, and rebuild fractured relationships. Without swift action, Cleveland faces a wasted season amid preventable dysfunction consuming a talented roster. Fans deserve better. Players deserve better. The city deserves better. Will the organization recover? Can Stefanski and Sanders coexist productively? Does Jimmy Haslam intervene decisively or allow the chaos to continue indefinitely? The answers determine everything: playoff aspirations, coaching job security, franchise quarterback identification, and organizational credibility. This isn't merely an unusual training camp controversy. This represents a complete institutional failure requiring painful decisions, uncomfortable conversations, and fundamental restructuring. The Cleveland Browns currently embody every organizational dysfunction warning sign simultaneously. The league watches another potentially talented roster sacrificed upon the dysfunction altar while wondering whether anyone in Cleveland possesses the wisdom, courage, and leadership necessary to implement solutions before salvaging competitive possibilities disappears completely. Thursday's practice dismissal wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. The explosion everyone anticipated finally arrived. Now comes the reckoning, determining whether the Browns survive their own organizational chaos or collapse spectacularly amid an entirely preventable disaster. Stay vigilant. This narrative just started unfolding. The consequences remain unwritten, but the damage is already catastrophic before the regular season begins.